Hello everyone, it's William. It is October 11th here in the year 2024. We'll soon be going backwards in time, and this is the 1907 diary entry for the day. This month is going to be very challenging for me. I think I mentioned that before because I'm working 5 evenings a week helping out with my brother and sister-in-law's catering business, and they have a big 3-week event that culminates on the 31st of October. So I'm rushing around getting ready for that every day, trying to get all my other work in, then going there and coming home exhausted. But anyway, it's fun. It's a family business. It's a lot of fun. So that's just the way it is this month. So I don't know if I'll be able to do more than one diary entry today. And this diary entry, I did the translation kind of on the fly, so it is a little bit sloppy, and I didn't have time to do a little additional research on things that Dmitri is talking about. It's a very interesting one because he's back in, he wasn't writing beginning on the 28th when they were heading back to Moscow, and it took, I think he said 2 or 3 days it would take. And when he first arrived, he was getting settled in. He didn't write, so we're up to the 5th of October, and it is a Friday in 1907. And all of these Moscow diary entries are quite interesting and give us a real detailed view of what his day-to-day life was like. The stay in the Crimea was a bit of an anomaly. It would be like someone trying to understand your life or my life based on what we do during a long vacation. But anyway, let us dive in. This morning I had only one lesson. Batushka couldn't come because of the liturgy, so I went with GM, MN, and Miss June to Muir to pick out furniture. We picked it out there after much hesitation, and having fallen in love with the material, set off. GM and I took a walk, and Miss June and MN went home. While walking, I attracted a lot of attention with my non-Moscow uniform, especially from some boys who even dared to run up and point. Having made a circle, we went home, and I was almost immediately summoned by Tyotya. The Metropolitan was there, whom I embraced. He invited us to a meeting of the Palestine Society on Sunday, and we said that it would be a great pleasure to go. After lunch, I received an invitation to go to the People's House to hear music and opera, and Tyotya said I could. Tomorrow, we'll go in parade uniform to meet Wilhelm at the station. I'll be wearing a tunic, which is hellishly small for me, but at least not tight. I'll probably get to drive around the city in a helmet, but I think Tyotya will oppose that. After lunch, there was a prayer service, and then from 3 to 6 I had lessons, after which I sorted out books. Tyotya returned as she had wished. Her mood was so-so. 10:30. Okay, it looks as though the 10 o'clock bedtime has gone by the wayside, at least if Dmitri is in his room, maybe by 10 o'clock. Then Tyotya doesn't insist that he be in bed by that time, which is good since he's 16. So Batushka, little father, of course, being the priest who is giving Dmitri his lessons in religion, apparently. And I'm not sure what holiday it would have been on 5th October, or rather I should say what holy day. It could also have been some special anniversary that was not on the general church calendar. But anyway, they all went. Well, Dmitri didn't go, but Batushka had to serve the liturgy, and so he couldn't give Dmitri his lesson. So off Dmitri goes with the Lamings, husband and wife, and with Miss June to a furniture store, apparently, called Muir. And Dmitri spells it phonetically in Cyrillic letters. So I'm just guessing. It sounds phonetically, it sounds like Muir. And there were a lot of foreign businesses in St. Petersburg and Moscow. So I mean the Scottish surname Muir. I think it's Scottish. And I didn't have a chance to look up at that and see if there was some upmarket furniture shop in Moscow in 1907 called Muir. But there he is picking out furniture, and I can tell you a little preview of what's going on in advance. There will be hell to pay for this purchase of furniture, but we'll find out about that later. For the moment, he's bringing the pestoons, as he called them last time, the staff in his and Maria's household, the Lamings and Miss June, to help him. So that's rather nice. I don't know why Maria didn't go. Dmitri was always very, very attached, specifically to his furniture. When he was parted from it after the revolution, that was a hard thing for him. And I'm not saying that it wasn't harder to be parted from the people he loved, but he also was so sorry to leave his furniture, not cars, not other things that you would have guessed, like cars or chessboards or whatever. It was his furniture. And later on, too, when he was at Schatzalp, and he would talk about how worried he was about his furniture, which was in storage somewhere. And in 1920, a big obstacle for him getting his own apartment was that he wouldn't have money for furniture, and he didn't like any of the furniture in the furnished apartments that he saw. So it was a big deal for him. And now he's buying some of his own. He's 16. He's not going to leave home for a while, but he wants his own nice furniture. So that was a big event for him. All right, so the two ladies go home in a carriage, and Dmitri and Laming go for a walk, which is something they do daily in Moscow. And they're out on the streets, and I think I mentioned before how sort of odd I found that, since only the year before, only in 1906, was Dmitri so anxious just to be in Moscow, let alone going out in public on walks. But apparently there was, there was no more real risk that the authorities saw, and he wasn't anxious about it anymore. I don't know if it was just himself and Laming, or if there were some undercover, security personnel around, or even some, uniformed police. But it sounds like there wasn't a big security presence, even if there was somebody, one or two people, because these boys are running up and pointing. And this is kind of an interesting thing that I learned, that if you were in Moscow and you were wearing a uniform for a St. Petersburg regiment, that would draw a lot of attention. I, never thought of that. I guess it makes sense. I guess people, especially boys, knew what the various uniforms, what regiments they belonged to, and Dmitri would have been, according to, in keeping, I should say, with Nicholas II's instruction, would have been wearing his Horse Guards uniform, and the Horse Guards were stationed in St. Petersburg. So people noticed that. They were, maybe Dmitri was thinking that it was mostly the uniform that was attracting the attention, but I would think a tall 16-year-old boy in a military uniform, not a schoolboy's uniform, but in an actual regimental military uniform, would have drawn attention anyway, even if they didn't know that he was a Grand Duke. But, most of the boys that you would have seen in Moscow, most of the 16-year-olds or younger for that matter, that you would have seen in Moscow wearing real military uniforms would have been from the Moscow Cadet Corps. So people were undoubtedly used to that uniform, and this boy wasn't wearing that uniform, so they found it interesting. Okay, so as soon as he gets home, Tyo wants him to come and see the Metropolitan, whom he embraces. So very often with a metropolitan, with a bishop, even just with a priest, you approach them by holding out your hands like this with the palms up, and they give you a blessing and with their hand, and then you kiss their hand. That's the usual procedure. But I guess if you're a Grand Duke, or maybe the friend of a family or some of the family of the Metropolitan, something like that, then it's more than that. It's an actual embrace. Dmitri doesn't seem to object to that. And what the Metropolitan is there to talk to them about is the Palestine Society. Dmitri calls it the Orthodox Palestine Society was the full name, and it had been something that Grand Duke Sergei was the honorary head of and very much involved with. So this was to promote Orthodox Christianity in Palestine, as it was then called, and to make sure that there were provisions for pilgrims. There were hostels where they could stay, no matter how poor they were, and to encourage people making, any Orthodox person making a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And in fact, I think Rasputin might have done that at some point, or at the very least claimed he did. So there's a very interesting book that was published in Russia that's actually the diaries or the things that Grand Duke Sergei wrote. I need to find that book and do a translation of that while on a visit to Palestine with his cousin, Grand Duke Konstantin Konstantinovich. They went and did the pilgrimage together. And yeah, back in Russia, Sergei was the head of that society and its patron, and surely the society wanted that tradition to go on. So Dmitri doesn't say that, he doesn't mention Maria. It doesn't mean that she wasn't included, but the Metropolitan was probably looking at him to be like his uncle, the future patron of the society. And so they are invited to go to the meeting of the society on Sunday. And Dmitri uses the plural we, so himself and Ella. We said that it would be a great pleasure to go. And did he really want to go? Yeah, it sounds like he didn't. He's not saying, he's not indicating to us that it was something he didn't want to do, or with his usual word, a bore, it will be a bore. I was hoping I wouldn't be expected to go. So the next thing I didn't look up was the People's House. He got an invitation that day, I guess in the mail or hand-delivered, to go to the People's House to hear music and opera. So not on that day, but at some date that he doesn't give us in this diary entry. And of course, it has to have the approval of Aunt Ella. Everything has to have the approval of Aunt Ella, and she said that he could go. So we know how much he enjoys music, so that's a good thing. And the big news is that tomorrow, Maria's fiance will be arriving all the way from Sweden. Wilhelm, a Swedish prince, a younger son of the Swedish king, not the heir to the throne. He'll be arriving. They'll all be going off to the station to meet him. And Dmitri expects to be wearing his parade uniform, the tunic. Apparently, he hasn't been wearing a uniform that long. He only started back in September in the Crimea. So why is this tunic too small for him? Well, I guess that enlightens us as to when he had a growth spurt, or at least a little one, at least grew a little. It's too small for him, but he's a tall, thin boy, and it's not too tight, so that's good. And he hasn't apparently had time yet to get remeasured and to order another tunic. and he's looking forward to wearing his helmet. But for some reason, he thinks that Ella is going to oppose that. He thinks he'll probably be able to, but he thinks Ella is going to oppose that. I only have photos here of him as quite a little boy. He was always meant for the Horse Guards Regiment, so he had this little uniform, and that is the helmet, and boy is it an elaborate one. Really fancy. And he wants to wear it, but he's not sure. And to give you again another little bit of a preview, yes, there will be conflict over this whole issue of the uniform, and Ella just really controls everything. Okay, so prayer service, and then this is an on-the-fly translation. I sorted out books. This is a verb that can have different meanings, and sorted out probably isn't the correct one. He probably wasn't organizing his books. He probably would have chosen a different word for that. So what I think he's doing is going over the text that he needs to cover for these lessons that he had from 3 to 6. So kind of doing homework, I think. Although he also usually uses quite a different verb and different phrasing when he's doing homework. So I'm not sure exactly what he's doing with the books. Tyotia has been out of the house. Apparently, after the Metropolitan left, she seems to have gone out. And she wanted to be home by a certain time, I gather, and she did get home by that time, but her mood was only so-so. So as long as we are reading diaries by our friend Grand Duke Dmitri, we are always going to know what people's moods were, because that is so important to him. All right. Long diary entry, very interesting one. You know, there are some interesting things just around the corner, and so I hope to see you back. Bye.